I'm here with Nick Mohnacky, the founder and CEO at a company called BundleIQ based in West Palm Beach, Florida. Nick has been a Florida resident and in part of the tech scene for a very, very long time. And he's also the co-founder of the Florida Entrepreneurs Club with me, which we have some exciting news we'll be sharing about an event that we have upcoming. So stay tuned for that. But welcome, Nick. Really glad to have you on the podcast today. I'm stoked that you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. We've been meaning to host this episode together for a little while, so it's good
Just
to
a little
finally.
bit. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here. So the way I normally start out these episodes is I love to get the founder or the person I'm talking to talk a little bit about who they are and what they're building. And so let's start with that. Tell us a little bit about you, how you got started, and what you're building right now.
Sure thing. So my journey to South Florida came by way of Hawaii and California, and I ended up down here in 2002. I was 17 years old, decided to go to school here, saw the beautiful photos of palm trees and the beautiful blue water that we have here in South Florida, and ended up getting a marketing degree, and then went into advertising sales through the top of kind of pre Great Recession through 2007 and into 2008. And I was working with a lot of real estate clients. So all the big developers, I was selling advertising to them and working with their agencies, Pulte, Lennar, DeVasta, kind of Toll Brothers. So that's really like where I cut my teeth into marketing and advertising. And then I decided in 2010 to quit that job and start a digital agency where we ended up doing mobile responsive websites. That was kind of uh, let's say the new era of mobile, with the iPhone having come out in 2007 and the iPad in 2010, and then got into app development shortly thereafter. And so, that led me to developing our fifth app, which is BundleIQ.
Wow. So talk to us a little bit about Bundle IQ and what it is exactly, and why, how is it, why is it different? How is it different than other products out there? How do you think about this whole space that you're kind of you're on the forefront of? Because like knowledge work has been having, it's funny because for the longest time we had paper, right? We had all this paper, and there was all these different filing mechanisms and organization systems that were developed, right? But now we have all these documents on our computers and in the cloud and everywhere, and it's like, how the heck do we find and surface information from all our existing stuff? And that's why I love what you're building at Bundle IQ. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the kind of the let's say the timeline of going, pencil and paper to documents, which was kind of Microsoft 1.0 when you would buy the Word and you'd buy the different softwares off the shelf and install them on your machine,
With a
and you would have kind of
CD.
yeah, with CDs. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that was like the Office suite. Like you had to have all the different CDs. And then sort of Microsoft 2.0 was, okay, can we put all of these files in the cloud and have like an Office suite, somewhere else that we don't have to continue to get the latest version, and they just, the new versions just roll out automatically. And so, Microsoft did that. Obviously, G Suite did their thing, kind of duplicating their efforts, and then Apple did their thing. And now, we're kind of in like 3.0, which is these all-in-one workspaces and like going deep on intelligent, kind of smart documentation. I know you had Almanac recently on your podcast, and the reality is, it's like, we've done a really good job as a society on creating data and manage, I don't want to say managing, but putting data in databases. And sort of the next evolution of that is like, how do we make it useful? And how do we get access to it when we need it? And so, with distributed workforces, you can't just ask Jeff, hey, Jeff, where did you put this file? or how do I do something because you're not available anymore? I have to email you and I have to wait for you to respond, or I have to message you and wait for you to respond. And, that adds up over time. So kind of the next wave is trying to figure out how to make use of all this information that we're creating in those really meaningful moments of knowledge work. And so with BundleIQ, I can talk a little bit more about how we do it, but that's sort of the evolution of how we got here today.
No, that's that makes sense. I mean, I think what we're seeing is an evolution, like you described, from simply inputting to now just not now being able to access what we input in in a more efficient manner, right? And just making it easier to collaborate as a whole with one another. So tell us a little about how BundleIQ is thinking about that, and how you've built out the product so far to achieve that.
I read this book called Good to Great, and by Jim Collins, and kind of the main takeaway from the book was that the book really challenged you to come up with and define, like, what's that one thing that you can do better than any other company in the world, and that's what kind of helps you go from good to great, and really like narrowing your focus and just dialing that core functionality or product offering or whatever it is, dialing that in and building your team around that. And so for us, the thing that, and by the way, they call it the hedgehog method or something like that. So our hedgehog is that we believe we can create eureka moments better than any other company in the world. Those moments of like unexpected inspiration where you're like, whoa, like shit, I didn't know I had that, or I totally forgot that I wrote this, or a piece of information that comes to you that connects a dot and it's like tangential to what you're even talking about right now. You're like, oh, I didn't even think that this over here was even related to this. So that's kind of the vision and the North Star of BundleIQ is really like wrapping your intelligence and bundling your knowledge so that we have understanding of how to make it useful for you in those moments as you're writing. To kind of put it another way, we you've probably heard of the mousetrap, right? Like everyone's sort of every sort of mentor says, don't just build a better mousetrap. And the way that I've viewed knowledge work and particularly these different softwares in the cloud, like Notion, for instance, or or some of the other ones that have come out that have become wildly popular. And it's no discredit to them, but basically the way I see them is that in many ways they've built better bookshelves. So you've got all these books of information and like they help you organize it better. And same with kind of in some ways like office suites and that sort of thing. And the thing that separates us from building a better shelf is that we want to help Jeff and people like Jeff to basically understand the contents of their books, like to be able to have that AI and that that thing working alongside you, supporting you, saying, hey, on page 23, line 77. That's a piece of information that you might want to look at. And so we're helping people understand the contents of their books and making all these bits of information useful.
Gotcha. So it's almost like Notion developed a way, like invented the Dewey Decimal System for all your documents, right? But what you're doing is you're taking it a step further and saying, when you open the book, here's how this connects to something else. Something else that's in on your bookshelf. What I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we really see like our product as a synergistic, piece of software that can snap into, these excellent knowledge creation tools. No matter what they are, whatever you decide. So if it's Notion, awesome. There's a lot of value that we'll never create when it comes to organizing spreadsheets and automation and going deep on different wikis and things like that within your organization, whether it's SOPs or whatever, project management, et cetera.
Do you see like your product, like you said, plugging in like the AI portion of what you're building, which we'll talk about in a second, of what you're building, could that plug into like a Notion product or like an Almanac type product where, you know, you can use your existing kind of workflow, however your documents are, set up, or wherever you create, but then you can have that Bundle IQ AI technology kind of accessible, no matter where you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we see it as like this intelligent layer that kind of sits on top of all this information, that graphs it out and then sort of helps connect the dots for you. And it does it, actively, but it doesn't require Jeff's cognition. Like you don't have to search for anything. You don't have to like be like, oh, where is that one thing? It's just constantly kind of monitoring and being like, oh, Jeff's talking about this. Oh, he's talking about this now. He's talking about this now. And then it's sort of nudging you and saying, hey, man, you've got 3 or 4 things here that you might want to check out.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's what it does right now, and it's really cool. I know. So I know, you guys are working on the AI feverishly to really, get it built out and also add additional functionality. I know one of the things you're planning on adding, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but hopefully, is a GPT-3 technology into your AI. How do you think about AI, and the future of it, and and everything that's going on? Should we be afraid of it? How are you implementing it into your product? And I guess let's start with that. How do you implement it into your product right now, and how are you thinking about moving forward with that? What features are we expecting?
Yeah, so from a founder's perspective, I really look at what we're building as something that can support human development and human capacity. I'm really bothered and by the fact that we're so inundated and overwhelmed by information. And like personally, I want my time back. Like that's that's what drives me. And I'm just like, if I have to waste, a day a week trying to find something, it's like it's enough. At what point do we just like throw in the towel and be like,
I give
dude,
up.
it's too much. And that's the reality for a lot of companies. Jeff may do a really, really good job at staying organized, but when you put Jeff in an environment where he has to rely on maybe 2,000 other people, forget about it. It's
Yeah.
like the knowledge work we do, just to a certain degree, isn't really scalable. So there's a lot of challenges with figuring all that stuff out. And so I look at this type of AI as an AI that supports humans rather than replaces them. A lot of the AI that's being talked about in the world is like the automation that replaces the bookkeeper, the CPA, or somebody that's like creating these really fantastic reports for higher ups. And and the AI we're talking about and that we've implemented is really augmenting human intelligence, and ultimately giving you your time back, which is just such a beautiful thing. And it's what keeps me rolling, like keeps me going. I'm like, we got to figure this out, and it's a big problem to solve because the reality is you're trying not to boil the ocean with all this data and be like, how do I like where do I even start? And how do we do this effectively with just the tremendous amount of gigabytes of data that exist? And 99% of it's unstructured. So it's not
Right.
like it's sitting in rows and cells. You know what I mean?
Right. It's very unstructured, especially if you're dealing with, written kind of documents that people put together. In that case, it is very unstructured because, it's literally in order that the person came up with in their head. So, a system has to be able to read that and understand it, right, before it can even make any kind of recommendation in terms of what to do with it.
Right. That's correct.
So when you build this AI, like you talk about it, complementing humans. But like, should we be like how nervous should we be about AI? I know you've spent a little bit of time on this yourself, so that's why I'm asking. Do you think that AI, is going to end up blowing up the world, or is like, do we? You think you feel a little bit better about it than, let's say, Elon Musk?
Yeah, it's interesting because it sort of feels like to me, and to I liken it to like the space race, back in the '60s when we were like, man, we got to be the first to the moon, or even like the building of the atomic bomb. It's like it's almost like a hedge against the bets that would be negative, that would go against us, and that's kind of the whole premise behind even OpenAI and their efforts, as a I think they have a 501(c)(3) and a for-profit arm. But it's like, can we be the ones, we meaning like people in the U.S., be the ones that create general AI, which is, for those of you that are listening that don't know about that, it's essentially like trying to recreate human intelligence. Um, and they say now like AI is no smarter than a fifth grader is smarter than the smartest AI, more generally speaking, because it can't multitask and do all these different things. So all that to say is, I think it's great that we're getting ahead of it. Could it be incredibly dangerous and detrimental to our society at some point? The answer is there's a higher probability than zero that it could be.
Oh boy.
But
Not what I was hoping to hear, but yes.
but you know, but I think we're going down the right path, and we're putting those kind of human controls in place to make sure that that doesn't happen. And looking at like the really positive side is that like the reality is, even with COVID or climate change, some of these problems that we're trying to solve are beyond our comprehension, like in terms of scale. It just scrambles our brain trying to figure out how do we even control the next pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to like managing data and these managing the collective intelligence and tapping into the collective intelligence of species, whether it's ants or bees or people, that's what AI can really help us do, because we're kind of like peeking out at our RAM, what we're capable of as humans at this point
True.
in a global society.
No, you're right. I mean, like we barely dealt with this pandemic.
Yeah.
How and like there are so many problems out there that are so massive, like you mentioned, climate change. Um, and that's one that's we're focusing on here in South Florida a lot, right? I feel like we have companies like Seaworthy Collective and just so many people working on companies to help fight climate change and reverse those trends. But they are such huge problems, and it's like, where do you even start? Agreed. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, you being a founder, specifically a non-technical founder, and any struggles that you've kind of come into with that and how you've overcome them along the way. Because I know, as someone who's also a non-technical founder myself, that those struggles are real and frustrating, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there, but what I got from just what you were saying is that like, what are the challenges of being a non-technical founder in a highly technical field of AI
Right.
tech, essentially. It it's a good question. It's one that I've reflected on quite a bit in the last like year and a half since we've decided to go all in on building this augmented intelligence. And it's interesting because when I think about like my childhood growing up in Hawaii, I was like lucky enough to live on a military base, and I went to school on base for a little while and then off base, and got to surf when I was 5 years old, and like was constantly in nature. It inspired me to go down this path of science, and I ended up starting out my college career as a biology major. Um, and when I think about software, I think about like this like a nucleus that's formed, and then it has to like you have to think about the scale of and the complexities of the human body on the cellular level, and then you go all the way out to the complex beings that we are, walking around, talking, having conversations, using tools, etc. You know, in my mind, I really liken, nature and biology and collective intelligence and all these things to how software works. And I had breakfast the other day with a woman that has a fantastic AI company and in the retail e-commerce space, and I didn't know this. She's from Tel Aviv, and she was telling me like, do you know how Waze was like? She was like, I talked to the guy that originally built Waze, which came out of Israel, and she was like, do you know how this he came up with this algorithm? He was inspired by watching ants. He's like, ants have never run into each other. They don't like bump into each other. It's like, and so he was inspired to create Waze, and the algorithm was inspired by watching this ant colony in Israel.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating. I had no idea that that was the case.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. That's a really cool story.
So, although I'm not the one that's actually writing the code, I think there's a lot to be said for kind of tapping into nature and really like looking at why we're solving this problem, why it matters, um, and what tools do we have available, to actually facilitate an environment and in a world that we want to live in. And I can tell you right now, I don't want to live in a world where I have to spend 61% of my time, according to McKinsey, managing information and only 39% doing tasks. Like, I'm over it,
Me too.
Like,
No, so one of the things I mean that came to me when I was building a company as a non-technical founder was just making sure that you surrounded yourself with people that you trusted, but that that you felt comfortable with, and like how do you think about, or how do you go about hiring as a non-technical founder for a technical role? How have you kind of approached that subject or that topic?
yeah, I've been really grateful and blessed to have been around the industry for a while. I started my company when I was 25. I know you started Best Techie when you were, I think, 13. So I got into the tech space pretty early. The BlackBerry was like, they were just phasing out BBM, and and Apple was kind of accelerating with the iPhone. And I got to meet a lot of the kind of the early, you know, people that shaped the industry, and including this woman who was the head of the App Store and developer evangelism, and my former CTO, and the first person that like really laid the foundation for our code. He was a tool chain engineer that hacked the iPhone and ended up building Nike Plus as the first app that he ever built.
That's
You know,
crazy.
so
That is crazy.
it's like he has two apps that come natively that he's touched the code or built or whatever over time. Siri is one of them, and Nike Plus was the other one. Um, and so obviously he didn't build all of Siri, but he was definitely part of the team. And so with that said, I've been able to kind of, through him and through other people that have been on my team over time and people that I've met over the years, I've been able to kind of tap into that. And then as of recently, particularly around the topic of AI, I've been able to connect with a lot of people on Clubhouse. And that was kind of a godsend because, we're not out networking. I mean, that's how you and I met. And I was able to connect with, Shira Eisenberg, who you probably know from Clubhouse. And she was like, an NLP, I don't actually know her title, but she was NLP, like, researcher at MIT. And, I connected with Anton, who's like a rock star, kind of AI influencer that works for Blue Ridge Technologies out of Maryland. And I connected with a few other people in AI, and just kind of through all of these relationships, I've been able to build the team over the past few years. So it's just been the culmination of just all my energy in the tech world, and also building the startup community, here in South Florida, and being, part of the fabric that supports everything, the influx that we've had now to
Yeah,
date.
for sure. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Florida tech a bit, which is something you and I are both, um, very fond of. So you've been in Florida, as you mentioned, since 2002. But from our conversations, you've been starting working on in the tech industry and pushing tech in Florida since what, 2013, 2014,
2010.
2010. Okay.
2010.
So my question to you, for this is how or why, what made you so bullish on Florida tech so long ago, and what's taken so long for it to get to this point where it's at now in 2021?
For starters, the quality of life here is in many ways unparalleled. I mean, it's, coming from Hawaii and California through grade school and high school, and then going here to college in South Florida. Like, I had no idea that Palm Beach County in South, from basically Jupiter to Miami, had crystal blue water, like the most amazing diving, like, the fishing's insane, the surf's decent in the winter, and the people are awesome. There's a lot of like high-powered, high-profiled CEOs that have retired here. So to me, it was sort of a great place to land and build after college. And you get to meet a lot of different people here. Like I can tell you at one breakfast that we sponsored Startup Palm Beach, which was the kind of the original entity that we were building the startup ecosystem here with. We sponsored a breakfast, and we knew that John Scully was going to be speaking. It was like, $300 to sponsor the breakfast. We had a table. There was a bunch of entrepreneurs there, young guys like ourselves. We got to hear John Scully talk about him and Steve Jobs walking through Stanford, and that was kind of like their way to get away and sort of, talk to each other and have their chats and kind of get outside of the office, and and so many different stories that he told. Well, because we were the sponsor and because I was the co-founder of Startup Palm Beach, he had to acknowledge us, and he's like, "Thank you for our sponsor," et cetera. And I ended up kind of waiting till everyone left and was chatting with his wife, and went and got our valet ticket, and I grabbed her valet ticket, got it verified, and then got in the elevator, and she's like gushing over me. She's like, "Oh my God, you got to meet Nick," and blah blah blah. And so I literally pitched John Scully in an elevator in Palm Beach.
That's nuts.
And by the time we got out of the bottom of the elevator, like, he was giving me his business card. His wife grabbed it, like wrote her number on the back of it. And she's like, "If you need anything, honey, you call me." And I'm like, okay. So, that's the kind of place it is here. It's, there's kind of this intimacy with major operators that kind of control the world to some degree.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me a story.
I've sort of always been bullish on that. What's that?
No, I was just gonna say I remember you telling me a story about one time you were out on like Sand Hill Road or something in the valley, and the VC's like, "You got to move your company if you're gonna raise money," and you're like, "No." So and that was when was that? That was many years ago. So at this point, so that took some conviction. It was 2019. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I had sort of temporarily relocated to San Francisco, and I was kind of making my rounds and sort of trying to figure out, like, do I want to be out here? Like, all the talent's out here, all the money's out here, et cetera. And don't get me wrong, I do really have a fondness for San Francisco and in that area. I did the Alcatraz triathlon twice, and I've swam across the bay, and I've done a lot in the city. But the story that you brought up is one that really stuck with me, because I went and met with this this investor who I was introduced to, and and I was like so proud and like so excited, and I'm like, wow, man, I got a shot, like, meeting with an investor. And it was my first investor I met with on Sand Hill Road, and the guy like looked at me, and he's, and on paper, like, I'm not really that impressive, like I didn't go to like some crazy university. I don't have MBAs and all this stuff. I didn't, I've done well for myself, and I've been a full-time entrepreneur for the last 11 years. And I've had some doubles, but never any home runs, like what they're probably used to out there. But anyway, he just totally belittled me in the meeting, and he was like, you're no Stuart Butterfield here, like. And I'm like, geez, dude, like, yeah. I mean, I'm like, Stuart Butterfield wasn't Stuart Butterfield until he was Stuart Butterfield. So anyway,
That's
so
true.
yeah, he was kind of just kind of, bagging on Florida. And this was the most pretentious thing I ever heard was, there's no direct flight. If I want to fly my plane from here to the airport in PBI, there was no direct flight, and I only do deals with direct flights. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have that problem anymore, thankfully. There's plenty
Yeah.
of capital that has flowed into Florida Tech and Miami Tech, which we're going to talk about now a little bit. So obviously you've been here for 11 years working on in the tech space, and from my understanding, having come in just a little over a year ago and kind of integrating myself into this ecosystem, this community. Um, there was other times where the community saw, flare ups, where, there was like really positive energy and some interest coming in. But what are your thoughts on what's happening now with the whole Miami tech movement based on everything you saw? Does it feel different this now? And if so, how are things different in your opinion?
So back in 2013 which was really where I was pouring a lot of energy into the community building, because I had my tech company and we were doing, product development for other companies. And at the time, my biggest client was Zynga in San Francisco. So we were like working out of my house, flying to San Francisco to do work. And anyway, so I've always sort of been like the token startup guy in the town, like on all the committees and things like that. And the reality is, nobody really took it seriously. Like the government wasn't putting real money behind it. Everyone was kind of like lackadaisical about it. Like this, South Florida is all about hospitality and, real estate and tourism and, and to some degree financial, like private wealth management and that sort of thing. But now, the timing is just right. People know what co-working is. They know to some degree have an idea of acceleration, and they're talking more and more about venture and funding and early stage, and the lingo and the jargon's kind of flowing more freely than it was before. Before it was a lot of education, kind of swimming upstream, trying to get Jeff on the same page, and that was a tough time. But we did, to some degree we did it. We were able to launch initiatives that perpetuated and launched initiatives here in Palm Beach County, and the same contract that I was able to get back in 2014 still lives. It was the first economic development initiative to support early stage founders in West Palm Beach, and that contract is still living here at 1909.
That's incredible. Yo, Nick, I just have to say the work that you've been doing, and I've said this before, but for this community and this ecosystem, certainly has not gone unnoticed by me, but I'm sure not gone unnoticed by anyone else as well, because you've been at it, I mean, longer than anyone I've met already here, among the longest, for sure. And so it's really great to be able to work with you on the Florida Entrepreneurs Club and have you as my co-founder. I get to say that because it's true. It's true, but B, because I just it's really a wonderful thing, because I feel like as the new person here, it's great to have someone who's been here for some time working alongside me in this journey as well. So thanks for that. I want to talk also about, because, we've been talking about Florida tech, and this is something, as we mentioned, we're both really passionate about. And so there's been a lot of people moving here. There's been a lot of money flowing in. There's been talent coming. There's been a push to develop new talent as well, from people who are already here. And I'm curious, how you think about, if you were to pitch, let's say someone from New York or San Francisco, or anywhere really in the States, to come move to Florida and build here, what would your pitch be? Why should someone do that?
First off, I'm stoked to work with you on Florida Entrepreneurs Club. It's been a lot of fun, and best techie and your involvement here in this city or county, and also South Florida is just really been a massive asset. There's so few people, and if anyone's listening, that really like take the time to tell stories and elevate founders' stories. I think a lot of the media surrounding entrepreneurship is, I would say, in many ways is sort of sold out, and which is fine. But the raw spirit of storytelling and like really cheerleading and getting in the corner of entrepreneurs has been lost, and partially never existed here in South Florida, other than maybe Refresh and Nancy Dahlberg, who's been a big proponent for the work we've been doing down here.
For sure.
Kudos to you, Jeff.
but now I'm here, and Nancy's here, and we're covering great companies. So that's a positive reason to move here. I think quality of life also, as you mentioned before, is huge.
Yeah. So to answer your question, that was just more of like we're stoked to have you here.
Thanks, Nick.
But to answer your question, I always start with quality of life. I'm like, if you move down here, your blood pressure, your heart rate, like everything's just going to drop. You're going to feel like you're on vacation. It's so awe-inspiringly beautiful. There's less rat race, and, you don't have to sit in traffic for, hours and hours a day. And I'm speaking more specifically to Palm Beach County. I mean, Miami is a little crazy still. It's a real city. Once you go south of Boca, as you're well aware, like the traffic picks up and it just gets a little bit more chaotic and more bustling. But South Florida as a whole, it really does have an excellent quality of life. And, there's something to be said about being able to go into the ocean here and go for a swim and have access to the outdoors all year round. What the vitamin D and I think just genetically, like what happens to your body just being out in the sun, and really, a lot of places where tech is, it's not that sunny all the time, and there's a lot of depression, and people are struggling with mental health because pre-COVID they had to get on a bus to go to work every day, and it's like,
or a subway underground.
Yeah.
No, that was me, right? I mean, that's what I did. And you're right about the sun. Something about it, when it shines down and it hits your skin, it just feels nice. It's like, the sun's hitting my skin, and you just have first of all, you also get a little tan. You get tanner easier because you're just outside in the sun more. That was one thing I noticed. So that's also a plus. Like you mentioned, there's so many reasons. And I think space is another thing, and cost of living is also another, right? And taxes and all those things. But like, aside from all of that, I really feel like our community that we've been building here, that you've been building here, that everyone's been building here, is one of the best communities I've ever been a part of. I mean, just the people here, they get it. And like, they are so welcoming. Everyone, and I do my best to welcome. Whenever I see a tweet saying someone's moving to Miami, I always reply and welcome them, saying, if I can be of any help, please let me know. Like, let me know what I can do to help you. Intros, whatever. And I think that's important. What'd you say, Nick?
I say you do a great job at that.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
and I agree. Like, that this is a unique community. I mean, the the fervor for, for each other, and for, I guess, the growth, and and the mindful growth. More importantly, the mindful growth. It's like people are really thinking about, okay, some of us have been here for a while. Like, what does it look like to have a healthy relationship between work and play, a healthy relationship, between startup and venture? And it's interesting. I think people definitely, they're kind of, re-engineering, like, if they're going to do San Francisco, it's not going to be the same way.
Mm-mm.
It's going to be different. If
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be the same as New York, it's going to be different. It's not going to be the same as LA. It's going to be different. So
I think that's true. I think a lot of us are kind of rethinking our approach to work as a whole.
yes.
And I mean, I feel like I've been just as productive. I mean, we've done a crap ton of stuff over the past 6-7 months for Florida entrepreneurs and for Best Techie, and we're still pumping out stuff all the time. But at the same time, I feel like I've had a better quality of life where I've also spent more time just enjoying nature, going outside, going swimming, riding a bicycle, going for a walk, just hanging out. And that, I think, is just so important. And I think, like, you get that vibe here. Like you mentioned, you feel like you're on vacation. I mean, I've been here for a year and a little over a year now, and every day I wake up, it's like, holy crap, I'm on vacation. So I
Yeah.
totally get that. Oh man. All right. So I want to make sure we end on time. So I have a couple questions before we get to the lightning round that I love to run with you on. So first, we mentioned Florida entrepreneurs, and I guess this is a good time to also promote the fact that we have an upcoming event for Florida entrepreneurs, July 28th, which is a Wednesday at 6 p.m. at Axis Space in Fort Lauderdale. Details and the Eventbrite are live, and you can check out FLENT.club for more information, as well as on my site, besttechie.com. But Nick, I wanted to reach out to you and ask for this podcast episode, because I've never asked you this, and I think it's I'm not sure what you're going to say, but I think it'll be interesting to find out. So when I reached out to you and asked you to start this Florida Entrepreneurs kind of club with me, what were your initial thoughts, and what made you say yes? Because we had only spoken like a couple times prior to me asking you that.
Yeah, I think there were kind of two things. One, I think it made a lot of sense to create sort of this net for the community, and we started out obviously in South Florida, but having like a catch-all for entrepreneurship in South Florida, because just by nature of building, there's all these different things, the innovation center, all these things, right? So I saw this opportunity as sort of to be like the underlying kind of, net to like bring it all together. And then two, your enthusiasm is intoxicating. And I realized that you're a total you're a total doer. Like, you're a doer. And I would have never done this if I felt like I had to drive the ship. Like, if I felt like I had to, like, pull you along. And I knew that it would be, I didn't know, but I had the feeling that it would be a synergistic relationship, and that we'd be able to kind of move the engine forward together, without a whole lot of effort. So that was a gut check for me, but those were kind of the two things.
No, I think that I had the same exact thought process, which explains why we work so well together. But no, I had a similar thought process, pretty much exactly. And it was like, and the way I reached out to you when I was like, well, I talked to this guy, and he's building something cool. He said he's been here for a while. And so it kind of went to that. And also, like, I felt like we had clicked a bit or that early. And so I was like, might as well reach out and see what he says. And like, so I had, at that point, I had known about BundleIQ. I had known about 1909. We had talked a couple times. So it just made sense. You were the person I had spoke to the most, but that I also connected with, I think, on the, like the highest level. So
I, yeah.
sweet. All right. So final question before we get to the lightning round, which I'm excited about, because you don't often ask very much from our community, from the community as a whole. I'm giving you the opportunity now on this episode of TechieBytes. What's your ask for the community? What do you need help with right now, Nick? How can we help you?
Oh man, we are like this close to launching with GPT-3 and just launching with these new data integrations. And for us as a company, it'll be sort of like the first real representation of the vision. And I would love feedback. So as soon as we drop that link, like stay tuned. We'll send it out to the best techie community. But I'm so excited. So, and I know that just about anybody that's a knowledge worker could stand to benefit from our tech and what we're doing. So it's just a matter of hooking it up, downloading it, hooking it up, and saying, I'm willing to give it a try. So
Sweet.
that was the biggest thing.
No, we'll definitely make sure to obviously promote that. And I'm excited for everyone to try out what you've built, and once it's released. I've been using BundleIQ with the early version of the AI, and it's really cool. I love using it. It's BundleIQ. Sorry, did I say Bundle AI? With the AI, BundleIQ. Anyway, I use it all the time. Nick and I collaborate all our Flint stuff through Bundle AI, all best techie articles and notes and all that stuff goes through BundleIQ. And I couldn't be anywhere without it. It's been such a vital tool for me, and I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to learn about it directly from Nick and use it for all these months. So I can't wait for the GPT-3 release, Nick. I'll definitely be sending you feedback.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, Nick. So you made it through the hardest part of the podcast, which is the conversation. And now we're up to the lightning round. So whenever you're ready, you let me know. We'll get started.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Let's go. All right. What's your favorite artist or band?
Sublime.
Nice. That's a good choice.
Also, fun fact, we went to the same high school.
You did?
Yeah.
At the same time?
No, they're older.
Okay, just making sure. I didn't think so. I thought they were older. All right. Do you have, okay, this is a good one. Do you have any secret talents?
Secret talents? I can hold my breath for more than 2 minutes, like pretty regularly.
That is a cool secret. I'm glad I asked you that one. That's really cool. All right, here's another one. So maybe it's the same answer, but what's your cure for hiccups?
Oh. Oh man, it's so bad. Like I love spicy food, but every time I eat it, I get hiccups. So it's it's normally, I don't know. I think I have to will them into submission. It's more of a mind game than it is like a tactic or like a drinking water upside down or something.
Yeah, I found that peanut butter works pretty well for me.
Ooh, I'll try that.
Try it next time. Get back to me. All right. If someone narrated your life, who would you want the narrator to be?
Oh, you broke up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. If someone narrated your life, who would you want the narrator to be?
Matthew McConaughey.
Ooh, that is a good one. Yo, I could totally see that. Matthew McConaughey, his voice is so unique. It's a good voice.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Green light.
All right, last one. If you could only eat 3 foods for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Oh, it would be Thai, Mexican, and probably cereal.
What kind of cereal do you like? What's your favorite cereal?
I like explore all different types of cereal. I've been eating a lot of like Raisin Bran and stuff. Like I love raisins, so I'll eat like Raisin Bran with granola, Raisin Bran.
I love raisins too. I also Special K has a special place in my heart. Something about it's so simple, just tastes good. I don't know. But Nick, I appreciate you being on this episode. I'm really glad we had a chance to finally sit down and do it. if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there. It's at Mohnacky. You might have to spell it out, Mohnacky. Yeah, just hit me up on Twitter.
He's also on Clubhouse.
I am on Clubhouse. I'm not as active as Jeff, but I am there every Monday and Friday at 3:00.
Exactly. All right. Well, Nick, thanks again. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Appreciate you, bud.